That's pretty good. You're gonna have to do some hand jabbing on this.
I don't know the words to this one.
Come on, guys, yeah. Wow, you're really a live group. I mean, listen.
Guys that are old now running around and they're real decent.
Yeah. We've tried to lay out a site that's close enough to the bank so that people can get into. We're looking at a 14 by 14 foot platform. We're using 7 to 10 inch beams running laterally like this, supporting them on cement piers, and then we're going to put a 3M compound between the cedar pier, the cement pier and the cedar post, and it'll goo out so that it'll make a nice seal. And then the platform runs the way that you see this board here. And then there's going to be a 6-foot cedar tub in the upper left-hand corner right here. So there's going to actually be a communal type tub 2 feet above the deck and 2 feet below the deck. And we're going to feed the water from the upper spring all the way down. It'll take about 3 30-foot flumes to get it to this site. And we're ready to go on this, and this will be finished probably this summer. All right, the first thing that we did, I was up here a week ago, and I had a day special. What I decided to do was try to take the top off this tub, and there's 2 ways to do it. One is you could rip it with a ripping saw. The other way is to split it, which means that you could have true grain running the whole distance so that when you start measuring your tub, it'll be exactly within the grain structure that the tub is. So I started my wedges here, worked them in here, and I had wooden wedges to follow up my metal wedges, splitting them here, and with PVs I pried it up, popped it loose from the top, keeping the total common grain, flipped it off to the side, which makes a good platform for working. Now what we're looking at is a tub that is 10 feet long, and it's about 40 inches in diameter, and this is the largest tub that has ever been built here at Bagby. The chainsaw runs along this edge, an opportunity that the old folks probably never had. So we run the chainsaw along the edge, and then I run laterally across with my chainsaw, cutting out the bolts. And then using an adze, you can come in here. This has to go about 4 or 5 inches deeper. And all you have to do is come along here with a shipwright adze or a gouge. The gouges are hard to find, and they're really great for making flumes. And we may be able to go over to the flume that we already have finished later to show you how that works. But all you have to do is come along here and just chop out the pieces, the bolts, that have been chipped with the chainsaw. So it's pretty fast. It comes out nicely like that. And some of the pieces that we get out are very large. For instance, one of the largest bolts that we have, something like that, about 2 foot wide, about 1 foot thick. So this is the butt cut. What you're standing on is the biggest part of the tree. But what we have here is a 150-foot tree that we fell, hopefully, to find it sound without any butt rot, so that we could come down here and we could have our 5 tubs. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 tubs all in one tree. And the smallest tub that we have is still larger than the one that we have over at the springs. So that we're actually going to have a very uniform section of tree, one tree, making 5 tubs, which is really great considering that we got it all out of one tree. What we have here is a good sound cedar tree at the tip that we plan on making a flume out of. We have it about 12 inches at one end and about 8 inches at the other end. The way we do this is we run laterals along just like the tub, and we put our chainsaw down to about 4 inches, and we run our chainsaw along the edges. And then we have people who have shipwright adzes and gouges to finish it up. So what we're doing, we're taking out all the chainsaw marks to try to get a nice level flow all the way. Now we need 20, this is a 30-footer. We need 5 of these just to reach the tub. So it really entails a lot of work and a lot of cleanup, but this will take care of getting that water from the upper spring all the way down to the round tub. These are 2x12s, and they're rough cut by an Alaskan mill, just like we saw working earlier. We now have enough lumber to do the upper platform, and we should get that finished this year. Now over on this side of the cabin, we have the new shutters that we built. They're exactly 1.5 inches thick, standard Z block construction, post across the top, Z down the side, the bottom, tied with a T in the back. So we have been able to make this old cabin, which was built in 1935 by J. Harold Michael's folks. We've been able to make it secure, lock the building so that we can keep our equipment in this structure while we're under construction, and hopefully by the end of next summer we'll be able to finish the other 2 structures that we plan on building. Now Steve Garrett repaired the front door, and he also made a new back door, which is made, we ripped this out of 1-inch stock, and essentially it's a board and batten construction, so that some structure and get at our tools and our oil and things like that. So it really is secure. This is the original, one of the original cabins. The first one burnt down. This cabin was built in 1935 by J. Harold Michael's father and his uncle. They put it together to be the lookout, the fire lookout for the entire National Forest district that we're in right now. And this was the telephone wire terminal for all the lookouts that were around here. Now when J. Harold Michael grew up, he grew up as a trailblazer, and when he was 12 or 15 years old, he was building trails around here. But when I met J. Harold Michael, he was standing in front of this very cabin with tears in his eyes, and he was so concerned that somebody actually would carve their names in this building. He was saddened that there's such a tremendous amount of vandalism, and what we would like to try to do to be historically sound in our procedure of restoring this facility, what we'd like to do, we'd like to take a gouge or a chisel or something and face these timbers, bringing them down to true stock, getting them round again, and trying to take off some of this graffiti that is collected over the many years. But now that it's secure with our shutters, we will have this blocked up. We'll have hinges on here so that we can swing these doors out of place. And hopefully, by having people on the site and having people here monitoring the hot springs, we'll be able to maintain this facility for years to come, and not my time, if maybe my children's time, and maybe their children's time. These are some of the original tubs. This particular tub was built by J. Harold Michael's father over 60 years ago. It's the largest tub here, and it was in the end stall when the building burnt down over 4.5 years ago now. And the reason that they did not get consumed by fire was that they were full of water and they were scorched on each side, and consequently the superstructure of the entire building was gone, and these 3 tubs were the only tubs left after that fire. It then worked its way into the platform, which was only 2 years old, worked its way back into the platform and burnt a brand new cedar platform back in this area. What we'd like to do is build the original structure back to what it was. It's going to start at this point. It's going to run 35 feet down to that stump down there. It's going to be 14 feet wide, and there are going to be individual stumps that people can go in and enjoy. Now there's going to be a lower platform, and the lower platform is going to set down below, and it's going to have these 3 original tubs on it. The 3 original tubs that were in the fire, they're going to sit down on the platform. There's going to be a round communal tub down in that area, so that we can keep the people that want to bathe privately on the upper structure in this area, and those people who want to bathe in a more communal, naturalistic environment, those individuals will be down on the lower platform, and they will be all out in the open. So it looks like it's going to meet the needs of all the public and not just one group of individuals. when you were here last, back in October, the upper platform was just under construction, and we had plans to develop this cold water cistern. Help yourself. But at that time, we were working on the dam, which is about 900 feet upstream from here. During the winter, we found that the dam did work. It reached the top, it overflowed, and now that water level has dropped considerably because it's getting well on into the summer. We were wondering if we'd have enough head pressure to be able to create a cistern that would fill fast enough so that the people could empty, say, 5 tubs and come here on a regular basis, and all of this, of course, to fill their tubs from the hot water and the combination of the cold water. But we didn't know if the 3/4 line with the 4-foot head of water and the 14 feet of rise in the hill would be enough. It's all quite intuitive. So last winter we constructed the cistern out of cedar. It's about 4 feet deep, about 3 feet across. Put the 3/4 inch pipe in the bottom, started our flow, and the water at that time shot like an artesian well about halfway up into the center of the tub, and we were quite amazed that we could put our thumb on it and actually shoot a stream of water from the amount of pressure that was. This is a very necessary feature for the total plan of the hot springs because, as you know, we have an upper spring that's been developed, and up until that time, every tub had been filled by walking down this trail behind me, dipping a bucket into the spring, into the stream, coming back up here, filling their tubs, walking down, which added a lot of character to the entire hot springs. But because we've got that platform built and that upper tub built upstream, what we have is a gray water situation, and so this is going to eliminate that because they can come right off the deck, fill their tubs, and have clean water. Now, we don't advertise this as drinking water per se, and we're trying to keep people out of it. I've noticed on several different occasions where people will come out of the tubs and jump in here, but we've had to put boards over the top so that you can just barely get a bucket in here so that the people won't be jumping in here and cooling themselves off. Now this small section of flume, contoured to the shape of the main flume, will fit on the large tub so that it'll be notched or dadoed right into the main flume and then set into the position. Different technique for getting the water from this hole into the tub is something that we discovered on the lower platform, something that is sort of foolproof. It's a flapper valve right behind here, mounted to the wall with a handle on it, so that when you raise the handle, it opens and the water will pass through. But when the handle goes down, a flapper valve comes down in the main flume, the water runs into the tub. And then of course down here is the drain hole. The reason we put the drain hole off to the side here and the flume off to the side here, the short section of flume here, is that quite often when people use the tub, this has always been in the way over here, like in the old building, it was right in the way. But here we can sculpture this into a nice round backrest so that somebody can use this space also. So the whole tub can be utilized. The wall comes clear into, well, I see what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to put the wall right on this 2x4 here and come clear down in front. And then
it's back here.
Oh, it's going to be on the back side. That's right. Yeah. So you get an extra 4 inches. So it'll come down on the back side of the tub, so that we get all the runoff to go in that direction. Well, that'll work out good. I think this is going to work out a lot better than when they had the flume was sitting in the old tubs. The flume was sitting on this and pull it out, and of course the flume was sitting here, and it would run the water directly into the tub. And it also allowed a little bit of water to run by while you're doing that. And the innovation that we're trying to employ here is that you close the valve down, and then it will fill a tub and you'll be through with it so that somebody else can utilize the water. I think that's going to work out a lot better. And it'll also be to the point where people aren't losing the plugs and things like that. Should last a lot longer too. The largest tub, we're in the stall of the largest compartment here, and this will be a closed environment. This is designed specifically like the original platform that burnt down. Small rooms, door will be here. This will all be closed off, so there's just enough room to hang your clothes, and there'll be a little seat over there. And so that when you walk into the room, the only opening that you'll see is this skylight that we have here, and then the wall will be boarded up to about 6 foot, so you can still look over the wall. It'll still give you a feeling like there's a lot of the woody air, wind, rain, snow dripping in this environment. But we used the first stall for the largest tub so that we could keep them in order, large to small. We took 5 tubs right out of the belly of this 150-year-old cedar tree, and this is the largest one. So a tree with 7.5 foot dimension at the butt, by the time you get out of the swell of the tree, you're up into about a 40-inch tub. So this tub is a 40-inch tub, and we decided that we would try to build into it a unique feature. And since this is sort of the first project, I felt it was important that it would fit me. And so I decided to put a kind of a rump rest in it. And you can see where the water has settled in here, which is not really a bad feature, because when it's empty, you want a little bit of water into it anyway. But I kept setting in here until it got to just the right shape so that I wouldn't slip down, because my plan was that whoever would sit in here, and it's such a large tub and you fill it up with water up to here, you're almost buoyant, and the tendency is that you want to slip down, and so we felt that maybe it'd be better so that you wouldn't slip down. We could put this little rump rest in here, and I thought, well, while we're carrying it that far, maybe I'll put a couple clavicle holes in here, and so I sculptured that so that your shoulder blades sort of fit back in here. And when you rested your neck back on here, this is a nice sort of cervical adjuster, and your head rests right on that point very comfortably. So it's going to be very comfortable, and it's filled full of water. We haven't gotten to the point where we filled this one up and experimented with it yet, but it's very close. If you'll notice on this wall will be bored and battened, smooth on this side with the 2x4s on the other side. So you're going to get a nice visual effect, and it's also going to be sturdy. I may have mentioned, this before, but the whole idea was to try to make this, some people jokingly call it drunk-proof, but we do want to make it to the point where people aren't, going to pry off the boards and everything. So you can see the board and batten, which is probably the oldest building technique ever used, is still the best for this kind of construction. Now, if you'll notice this little tiny slide rail here that we've built so that people will be discouraged from putting anything on here, especially candles, because these walls will stay dry because they are under the drip line here. And what we don't want, of course, is somebody to inadvertently come in here at night, want to light their little environment, put a candle here, somehow get up and leave, and they may be the last people that use the facility, and here's this candle burning, and it could easily catch the wall on fire, and we would lose every bit of hard labor that we've put into this since 1982. So I think that's a good feature. Right there. Isn't this fun?
It is.
It's fun.
It's pretty neat.
It's getting to the point where it's almost...
We should put a little symbol carved in the sides of these.
Oh yeah, well we were thinking about it.
Do you guys have a logo or anything for the Friends of Bagby?
Well, we do. We don't know exactly how to utilize it. We're thinking right now about putting a little cupola on top. It says Friends of Bagby, and we've already carved out the sign, so we have to get a consensus of opinion where this wouldn't... Well, every time we make a decision about a design change, or something like this Friends of Bagby little turret up at the top, sort of like a little cupola up at the top of the building. Every time you come up with an idea, someone will say, wait a minute, that sounds like it would be too much advertisement and we don't want to pound our own drum. And I think it's important to realize that a lot of the people that have been working on the project now for about 4 years think like that. I mean, to us, this is a way of life, and we don't want to pound our own drum and put up a sign, Friends of Bagby. But what about 25 years from now? What about 35, 45 years from now? People are going to really forget quite rapidly how much work did go into the facility. And so it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a little sign on it, Friends of Bagby, non-profit corporation, whole bunch of people getting together to do a good thing for the public, non-profit. And like I said before, which is an important point to me, and I keep making it when I talk to people about Friends of Bagby, is that volunteerism is a dying craft, there, however, is becoming a resurgence of this volunteerism kind of awareness, and it's really exciting to see the movement in Boy Scouts, movements, the trail builders, the thing they're doing at Timberline Lodge. I think we're getting back into it so that volunteers can come back in to situations like this and do things that the cities or states or government cannot do any longer. Now, what they're doing on the other side of this wall here is essentially a long process that involves kind of a step-by-step process of getting the wood to the point where it's got a nice subtle patina effect to it. This has gone through about, I would say about 6 different steps. First the adze, then the hand chisel, and so forth. But that still leaves large slivers here. So after they're through chipping out the side, smoothing it as much with chisels that they can, and some of the adzes that I have that come into this curve, they will then go to the next step, which is a rock finish. So we pick up out of the creek bed various grits of rock, first one being slightly coarser in grain than say this sort of a mudstone finish here, which will actually get smooth on use. And so like this rough area here that has been missed, what we'll do is just come across at a slight angle of the grain, about a 45-degree angle, and after those little tiny little shavings or whatever it is that happen to be sticking out, they stick out like little hairs, then you can come over with the mudstone and give it the final finish. Sometimes you put a little water on it, and that helps get rid of those little hairy things. And of course, the final finish, which is the thing that we have to look forward to now for the rest of the life of this this tub, which could have a long life. The best finishing tool yet that we have ever invented is the human body, I think. And you get, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 people going through this tub in the lifetime of this tub, or so forth. That'll even smooth it further. People might walk away with a few little extra slivers in their behind, but eventually this will all be this smooth, even where you see these rougher areas down in here. I was just up at the World's Fair talking to some of the people that did the large reconstruction canoes for the World's Fair at British Columbia. And some of the people that were in the display told me exactly how the Indians used to do it. And they didn't just burn out canoes. We have somebody come up and say, well, I know how they did it. They burned out, they just built a fire and burn out the canoes. Well, that's not exactly true. Sometimes they would burn out areas of a canoe until it would get soft. So you'd have maybe 2 inches of soft wood now, charred wood. And then you could go in there with a beaver's D adze, which is nothing more than a beaver tooth mounted on a kind of an adze that looks like a D, and you could quickly take out that charred wood, build fire up against the side of it again, do the same thing. So it was a quicker method, but they never just burned out their tubs as such. And then, of course, they still had to finish them. One of the things that they did say, however, is that when the thing was all finished, since they didn't have propane torches and, you know, those kinds of things, they would build a fast fire or a hot fire. You know, all these shavings that you see around here, especially when we were working up there skyphing off these long pieces of cedar. What they'd do, they would take a flash fire, they would fill the inside of this tub that had been smoothed with these stones, but still have some of these little hairy things sticking out, these little slivers, and they would just light it afire, and the fire would last maybe, I don't know, maybe 60 seconds. And it would just be like flash fire, and that would take care of the entire thing. I don't think we're going to do that. Not now that it's in place. That might not be a very good idea. But anyway, it's smooth enough, and like I say, you get a couple thousand bodies in here, and it'll be just fine. What do you think, Don? Did you ever think we'd get this far?
No, actually, when we started this about 4 years ago with the meeting in your house about your ideas on what to do, I thought you were out of your mind. We could never make all this lumber and construct buildings, anything so elaborate, but you sure proved me wrong on that point, Dan.
Sure seemed to be sort of an ambitious dream.
It was, but you know, we've had enough people that have been so willing to donate their time and come up here, and I just never cease to be amazed when you look back and see how much we've got done, and we've almost got the 3rd bathhouse completed, and you know, still going strong as an organization. Now,
I was just thinking of the last time I came up to see what we had done this last winter, raising the roof, getting the siding on, getting the tubs in place. And I walked onto it and I stood there and I flashed back to those first isometric drawings that I brought to that second meeting.
That's right.
And drawing them in an isometric form was in a way crystallizing my own concept of the overall plan. And I know that the overall plan seemed to be very grandiose at the time, and a lot of people scratched their head and wondered if it was possible to complete. But when I was standing there looking down on those 2 platforms, the lower platform and then this more recent platform that is going to be our replacement for the structure that was burnt down, I go, wow, here we are. Those buildings are up, the beams are in place. And I was just awestruck. It all of a sudden struck me that we have nearly completed a very major part of this.
Well, and the other thing that's so interesting too, you know, and when I look back, and I have to laugh, and when I think of the agonies we've had, the arguments, the disputes, you know, when you've got a bunch of volunteers together, a lot of strong-willed people, and one person thinks this way and one person thinks that way, and to think that we ever actually, you know, got through all this, we had our arguments, you know, got through it, resolved it, you know, made agreement among ourselves, and of course we had to get the Forest Service to agree with what we finally agreed with. And, you know, going through that whole process, when you're talking about a bunch of volunteers, people donating their energies and time, and actually to have reached this point, it really, it's encouraging. And,
well, I think that's why the whole organization works. We've not only been able to blend together a diversity of people's talents, but a diversity of personalities.
That's right.
That's right. We haven't always visualized things in the same way, and I agree that we've had to iron out on every major point. I think of the kind of that drip line, the sconce that's on the lower platform, how we set and had to make a decision on if we were going to put that there or we weren't, if we were going to put it 2 shingles or 3 shingles. Right. And then after that is solved, then we go to how the flume is going to be operated, how the tubs are going to be transported. And what I find is that overall, the majority of the people that have worked with us have been very cooperative, and we have been able to hold together a core of people since 1982, since the first work party.
To me, that's been the key. You know, there's been a lot of people up here in work parties, but a lot of different faces. Been people come and go, but there's been that small core of people that have stayed on. And to me, that's been the real key to our success, because if you have everybody in a turnover type situation, people being involved for just a couple, 2 or 3 months and then dropping out, now you've got real problems. But having this core of people and others willing to come up here and, you know, donate their time and labor, it's just been, never ceases to amaze me.
You know, the thing that seems like, well, it's a process of growth, is that in the beginning, there was a structure here. Many of us came to the structure when we were very small. I first came up here in 1953, for instance, in a rainstorm, and slept in a Dutch shelter out in that clearing. Thought it was a unique experience, Boy Scout adventure, got wet, caught a cold, would always remember Bagby Hot Springs. So when it burnt, and the period of time between it burnt and the time that we took over the project, and the tubs were sitting in the mud, we had lost a lot of the consciousness that had gone along with the group of people who used to use the bathhouse. And I remember, and it seems like so important for me, especially talking to people when we first started out, and that's where you and I started out, way back years ago in the tub, talking about this project that someday could be. And the thing that I wanted to hold on to was that this facility was used by all kinds of people, and that even though one group of people wanted it to be done a certain way, we had to remember the fact that for years and years and years, this facility has been used by older folks alike.
Well, speaking of that, now, you see, my experience, I just came out here from the East Coast 5 years ago, so I don't remember the olden days, but, well, for example, now, last month, when I was up here, this old couple came up and were looking around, and they said, "Oh, I'm glad to see what you're doing." I said, "Oh, you've been up here before?" "Yes, we haven't been up for about 10 years, since before the fire, and glad to see it." And then the woman looked at me and she says, "In 1930, we spent our honeymoon up here."
Oh,
well, that nearly broke me up, you know. Oh. And you meet so many of these people who come up here, you know, have these memories of way back when, and they come up and they are so thankful. Sometimes if you get discouraged about the work you're doing here, and you get people like that to come up and say, and they've got these memories, and they say, "We're so glad to see that people in the Friends of Bagby are rebuilding the place and taking care of it and all." And, you know, it really gives you just a nice sense of satisfaction to know that, you know, all the time and effort that you put into it, it's really worthwhile when you get it. And the public with our donation stump and all, you know, we don't have to really ask and all. People are just being real good about dropping their change, loose bills in that thing. That's keeping us going financially.
Oh, of course. If it wasn't for the public support, a project like this
people appreciate it.
And, Kathleen said an interesting thing today. She says, "I wish I was here when you were here more so that you could show me how to use these tools more than you have in the past." And I got to thinking about that, and a lot of times the people aren't here on those specific occasions when we're doing teaching sessions or whatever. I haul in a bunch of tools here that came out of my grandfather's trunk. People look at them and they've never seen anything like a fro or a 2-inch adze or a D adze or any one of those tools that we use so much to make those tubs. And I have to step back away and realize that I know how to use these tools and have been practicing these techniques for many years, but the people are so hungry to rediscover perhaps maybe our roots of how the early American days were, the kinds of tools they used, the broad axes, the setting here, for instance, the 1914 log cabin. Now,
Hey, I
we've got
remember the
people that
feeling
know
we
how to
had
work
when we
it.
started in that tub. I remember I was up there, I had heard the word in ads, but I really didn't know what an ads was. I still remember when you showed me, well, this is the way you use an ad, and we started chipping out on that tub.
That's right.
I remember I worked and I succeeded. I cut both my boots in the learning process of swing it and be careful.
But we haven't hurt anybody. That's
no, I know
thing.
And we haven't had any injuries at all, outside a lot of sore backs and things like that. But
a lot of sweat.
But it was really a nice experience for me, being basically a city person who's grown up in the city all his life, to come up here and learn something, how these old tools work and some of the stuff. It's been a good part of my education. Well, so anyway, Dan, where we stand now, the bathhouse that is the replica of the old one that burnt down is very, very near to completion. We have to do the final plumbing and some more work putting up the walls, and we should be able to have that in operation very shortly. We're doing our landscaping around the upper spring there to control the erosion there and have a good waiting area for people to sit. Of course, never-ending job. We got to get more firewood up in the woodshed to last us through the winter. We got approval, by the way, from the county for a plan for a septic system for the guard cabin. That's all approved, and we brought all the piping up, and now all I got to do is dig the hole and lay the settling tank and dig the seepage pit, and then the county will come up and inspect that. And then the other major project, of course, is trying to get our overall landscaping and pathways plan, which we've got to agree upon among ourselves and get the Forest Service to agree, so we can keep, because so many more people, numbers of people are coming up here, and people are walking all over, and kind of get it so they're walking in kind of defined pathways, but we want them to have a natural look, not look like a park, and keep the vegetation from being trampled down. And then, of course, the ultimate, we get all done with this construction, why then the old log cabin that we're using to store our tools now, that's being put on the historic register along with this building here, the old utility shed, and restore that back to its original condition, and that'll be like a visitor information center for people to come up and see, this is the way it was, but of course that's a little time in the future when we get all our construction done here.
So we've got the dam construction. We've got the cistern in, we've got the upper and lower platform. We're within hinges on the doors practically.
Right. Yeah.
So, so where do we go from here? I mean, there's a couple things that that still concern me a great deal that haven't been resolved. The hard work, the fact that the deck has to be put in and stuff like that. I mean, and the landscaping, some of the things you mentioned. As far as the way that I see our role is something that we've got to start to really concretely approach, because for people to come, in the future after us, to use the facility, to have somebody on site all the time, to deal with the public, we sort of have to agree among ourselves where in the world we're going to go with this. Now, a lot of us in the original, when we started out, thought to ourselves, this is a lifelong project, and in essence, that's what it is. Most of these volunteer projects, anyway, the ones that I've been involved in, the ones that other people have been involved in, seem to be just that. They never get out of your house. They're always there. So we've got some public problems. We've got to deal with the amount of people or something. We've jotted around a bit.
I guess as I say, to date our major emphasis, or I guess I should say the most visible part of our operation, has been the reconstruction, the building. Everybody sees this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a very important part has been our function of acting as caretakers up here, having somebody from the Friends of Bagby on site, trying to handle incidents. There are those few bad apples that want to come up, and there are relatively few percentage-wise that, you know, don't care for things and would want to destroy it given the chance. Keep an eye on those. But I do see that once we get this major construction done, our role as the Friends of Bagby changing from one of a major, you know, maintenance and caretaker type operation here. And that's where I personally, although of course it'd be up to the general body whether they felt differently, but I personally would not like to see us take on trying to build more and more tub capacity, because the more you build, the more the public comes up, and you can never build enough to accommodate everybody.
I think we have to
keep
stick
it at
to
a
our
reasonable size
original
and,
plan, and that's the reconstruction of the bathhouse, the maintenance of the facility, but I think that we should constantly develop a public awareness, and this is something I wanted to talk to you about, and I've mentioned this before, is that we keep coming back to the same subject, is that we cannot do all this work, that we have to develop an awareness. Now, I think maybe 4 to 5 years ago, that was very important to me, and I mentioned it to many people that if we could develop an awareness. See, I think in the old days there was an awareness. I mean, I sense the awareness. You hear people talk about the old days, the way that people went in, emptied the tubs, privacy, stuff like that. So we can't do the work. The public has to do the work, and they are the ones that are going to have to be aware. So if in the future we could sort of address and continue to address building an awareness of how the because if it ever got to the point where it was pay, you know, put a little style in.
I would just that to me would completely ruin it. It'd have a commercial aspect then, and an entirely different type of operation.
With Austin developing now, we don't know the impact that Austin development's going to have. We're going to get hundreds, thousands of people up in the woods to go to a facility which is commercial, and here we are, a volunteer organization. I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I think we're going to have ongoing.
It's going to be a continuing problem, and I know, you know, you can relate the way it was in the old days, but you can say it at campgrounds. Why, hell, 10, 15 years ago, you go camping, I don't care, it was unheard of to even lock your car at a campground, right? People just who went camping didn't do things, you know, they didn't break in the car. Nowadays, that's different. I don't care whether it's on the Oregon coast, it's up here. It seems that there are a lot more people who are getting out of the city who enjoy and see, hey, there's some easy targets up here. And they will vandalize cars, they'll come up here, they'll go other places, and it's, you know, how do you deal with it? How do you create a better way? Certainly peer pressure, you know, which we have found out up here when we've had problems with people when, hey, some others go, hey, we'll help you out. You got some of these rowdies here, you know, you need some help? That's work.
Well, you know, we've talked about a curfew.
We've been discussed the idea of a possible curfew, and to date we've considered, well, that isn't a solution. We are building better bridges with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Department. Hopefully, of course, they've got their problems with tight budgets and available personnel and all, but, you know,
maybe they'd be interested in a free membership.
We've already, in writing, given them the offer to say any of the deputies, their volunteers, their reservists, on or off duty, if they want to come up here, free use of the cabin, we would love to have them.
I don't want to be a policeman.
Particularly late Friday nights, Saturday nights. So anyway, you know, and the Forest Service, they are increasing their capacities for their law enforcement too. In fact, just in the last couple of months, they've hunted, and they made some arrests, some people that had a sawed-off shotgun there down below in Peg Leg Falls and vandalized down there. They nailed them. And you know, I think with this, there's more awareness on part of Clackamas County deputies or the Sheriff's Department, the Forest Service, law enforcement people, recognizing the potential problems, the increasing numbers of people coming up here, and so they're starting to devote a little more emphasis to that.
I guess that's what I'm saying.
You know, these are things that we kind of work at from all directions, and
okay, this is
just,
it. It isn't one group of people.
Right,
it isn't the Friends of Bagby, a couple of 14, 15 active hard workers. We're not talking about that.
That's right.
We're talking about getting cooperation, building an awareness with the public so that when we're not there and there's trouble, somebody can step forward and say, hey, buddy, don't do that.
I know, yeah.
Well, you smell that smell?
So it's
Smells like the turkey's cooking up there. You know, that's one thing we do.
and there's apple pies going in that wood stove there.
Well, I think one of the best things we did is to start early to build, you know, to refurbish the old 1914 log cabin, because now that we've got Wanda the cook in there, Wanda the cook stove.
Yeah, that's right. I remember. In fact, you were the one that spotted that old wood cook stove
Oh,
in
yeah,
a
yeah.
garage sale or barn sale someplace.
Right, it was definitely a great buy.
I remember you $50.
50 bucks.
They wanted for you to sell that out.
50 bucks. Yeah, I think I put about 250 in it.
Just packed it up there.
Just get it in shape. But it does bake pies,
Oh, it
cookies.
sure does.
And I think that one of the things that we really enjoyed is not only the fellowship, the friendship, is to watch the growth as people have matured and changed according to, you know, their specific needs in relationship to the project. But when we get together in the evening and we're all gathered around a great big turkey, and we have pies made in Wanda, and all the fineries, and then to look forward to sneaking away in the late afternoon down for a good hot dip. You know, that's sort of the payment, you might say.
That's the end of a beautiful day. Hard work and getting things done, and a big dinner, and a nice soak in the tub, and good fellowship. And
well, I think that can continue, and I think that's.
I know it'll continue. Sure will.
We need new people, and we need a renewed interest every year. We're, like I say, we're not out of the woods. It's going to be an ongoing process.
That's right. That's right. It certainly will.
But what a learning experience.
It sure has been for me.